to repeat it. This adage, originally stated by Edmund Burke, has been said in many different ways and contexts, but the principle remains always the same and always true. We must learn from the past. If we don't, we'll make the same mistakes. But if we do, perhaps we'll be able to alleviate future suffering. Out of the myriad of problems that face 2016 America, it is my belief that abortion is the worst. The last 43 years of legalized abortion has seen the death of 58 million children. But the question that I've been struggling with lately is how? How can this quiet genocide be stopped? And through this speech, I hope to give you a definitive answer. Not because I can see the future, but because I can look to history. First, I'm going to establish a parallel between abortion and past historical occurrences. Then I'm going to glean principles from those occurrences that we can apply to abolishing abortion. If we learn from the past, then we'll no longer be destined to repeat it. Here are some common arguments for abortion, cited by politicians and activists alike. If you believe abortion is wrong, then just don't have one. The government doesn't have the right to tell women what they can do with their own bodies. Besides, a fetus isn't an actual human. It has no rights that we are bound to respect. But have we heard these arguments before? If you think about it, these were the same reasons used 150 years ago to justify slavery. If you believe slavery is wrong, then just don't own slaves. The government doesn't have the right to tell people what they can do with their own property. Besides, a slave isn't a real human. Pro-slavery Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney put it this way in 1857. Slaves have no rights which the white man is bound to respect. The parallel between abortion and slavery is striking, almost eerie. Let's go deeper. The Supreme Court cases that constitutionalize slavery and abortion are very similar. Both the 1857 Dred Scott versus Sanford case and the 1973 Roe versus Wade case were decided on a 7-2 vote. What I think is the most interesting similarity is that the justification for both rulings was the same as well. Both decisions were based on dehumanizing the black person and the fetus. In Dred Scott, it was argued that, quote, Negroes are exactly intermediate between the superior order of beasts, such as an elephant, dog, or orangutan, and European or white men. In Roe versus Wade, it was argued that a fetus is no more than a, quote, blob of tissue, like a fingernail or a wart. Defining slaves and fetuses not as people, but as property, was the only way to deny them constitutional protection. And then the slave owner and the mother can have the choice to keep or kill. It is in denying the personhood of the African American and of the unborn that one finds a justification for enslaving the one and murdering the other. Let's take this parallel a step further. My next question is, how were slavery and abortion advocates even able to justify the dehumanization? I believe that the basis is in the underlying worldview. And the only worldview that justifies denying the personhood of another human being is a survival of the fittest mindset. The idea that if one is stronger than another, one has the right to do what they wish to the weaker. I read an article from the Pro-Choice Action Network. They claimed that a fetus isn't an actual human, just as the egg you had for breakfast isn't a chicken. What I noticed was that in order to place a fetus in the same category as a scrambled egg, they first had to place humans in the same category as chickens. The only way that slavery and abortion advocates are able to deny personhood is to define humans as animals. And then, if African Americans and unborn babies are one step lower on the evolutionary ladder, then it can be thought that the superior and stronger humans have the right to redefine the worth of inferior and weaker humans. That's the only way to rationalize the dehumanization. And if you think about it, this was the same mindset that Hitler used to justify his killing of the Jews. This is why the Hutus killed nearly 1 million Tutsis in the Rwandan genocide. Rwandan President Paul Kagame acknowledged this 20 years after the Rwandan genocide, when he said, quote, all genocides begin with an ideology, a system of ideas that says this group of people here, they are less human, and they deserve to be exterminated. History history is repeating itself. Over and over, we find this evolutionary worldview that some humans are better than others, and that justifies exploitation. And this is the same mindset that has again permeated our culture under the sometimes even well-meaning campaign of choice and women's rights. So the lesson that I draw from all of this is that the parallel between abortion and slavery isn't necessarily between who was being oppressed or who was oppressing, but rather the mindset that justified the oppression. Nowadays, most people know that skin color does not determine the personhood of a human being. So back to my original question, how do we create a widespread understanding that age does not determine the personhood of a human being either? Since slavery and abortion are based in the same core mindset, maybe we pro-lifers can learn some lessons from abolitionists. In looking back to the 1800s, it seems to me that there are two main things that were necessary to abolish slavery. The first was Christianity and the gospel. As said before, slavery can only be rationalized by the evolutionary idea that the stronger are in control of the weaker. So the only way to counter that is with the idea that God created all human beings equal in his image. That's why Christians were the first to proclaim the personhood of the slave. Christians made up the backbone of abolition. They knew that the only way to defeat the idea that weaker humans can be enslaved is to spread the idea that all humans have worth in God, no matter their ethnicity. It was a battle of worldviews, Christians with scripture on the front lines. The second thing that was necessary was war. In America, abolishing slavery took physical conflict, civil war. But in England, though there were no guns or blood, there still was fighting. It was just on a different type of battleground. William Wilberforce fought the battle for abolition as a powerful member of the British Parliament. But he recognized that his battle wasn't even exclusively a legal one, it was a spiritual one. He knew that yes, the practice of slavery must be abolished, but so must the mindset that made slavery acceptable. And the only way to defeat that mindset is to wage spiritual war. That's why William Wilberforce went on a campaign to change the morals of England. He knew that once the underlying worldview was addressed, then the issue would take care of itself. And by doing this, Wilberforce won. So what must we do to abolish abortion? First, as Christians, we must be bold with the gospel. We must care compassionately for the women in crisis and for the unwanted children. We must undermine misinformation, unsettle the indifferent and the apathetic, and expose, not just abstain from evil. But most of all, we must be confident that abortion is wrong because of a binding moral law that has its reference point outside of humanity. Love your neighbor makes no sense in a world run by survival of the fittest, but it does make sense in a world where humans, distinct from animals, have worth in the eyes of God. And to spread that is the only way to defeat the mindset that justifies abortion. And second, we must wage spiritual war. Pray. In order to change the laws, we first must change hearts. And the only way to do that is through prayer. We must ask the one who is most powerful to fight with us. That is the real answer to abortion. Now that we're armed with this information, the next step is to take action. And this is why I decided to write this speech on the overdone topic of abortion. Because if we're serious about ending the worst atrocity in American history since slavery, we're going to have to stop hearing about this and actually use it. If we want to become the backbone of modern-day abolition, then we, Christ's followers, must unite around God's forgiveness, but also his objective standards of right and wrong. And looking to the past, learning from history, it seems that to win, we're going to have to change the mindset of an entire culture. That's not going to be easy, but I believe that it's doable. Our tools are spreading the gospel and prayer. And you know, I don't really believe in those actions themselves, but rather in the one who gives those actions power. That is what gives me